The secret number that makes $1 million explode isn't magic, luck, or even timing. It's a point where money finally starts working harder than you do. And most people never get to see it because they stop building before they reach it. Compounding feels like a slow trickle for years, but once you hit the right number, it snowballs in a way that looks almost unreal. And that number is not 1 million itself. It's what comes before it. When people hear about compounding, they usually imagine endless growth. Put in a little, wait long enough, and one day you're rich. But the truth is, compounding only feels powerful once you've built enough of a base for the growth to actually show. The first few years are the hardest because your money isn't doing much. Saving $10,000 and earning a 7% return gives you only $700 in a year. That's not life-changing, but saving $100,000 and earning the same return gives you $7,000 in a year, without you working a single extra hour. That's when you realize money can actually replace parts of your paycheck. This is the real reason wealthy people look like they're accelerating away from everyone else. They're not just smarter or luckier. They simply cross the threshold where compounding starts to pick up speed. For most people, that number sits around 6 figures, close to $100,000. Once your investments pass that line, you start noticing the difference. The growth no longer looks like pocket change. It feels like an extra paycheck. And if you keep building, the momentum becomes impossible to ignore. Think about it like this. Imagine 2 people investing the same $500 every month at a 7% return. In the first 5 years, both of them will look at their accounts and feel unimpressed. One has $35,000, the other maybe $40,000. Nothing life-changing. Nothing. But fast forward a decade or two, and the story flips. The one who stuck it out past $100,000 starts seeing jumps of $10,000 or more in a single year, all without saving an extra dollar. That's when most people finally say, compounding works. But it only works because they survived the boring stage. The rich understand this patience. They don't stop when growth feels small. They know that once their money hits the secret number, the game changes. And here's where 1 million starts to explode. If you already have $100,000 earning 7%, you're getting $7,000 a year. Grow that to $500,000 and you're at $35,000 per year. Reach $1 million and now your money is making $70,000 every single year. That's the size of a middle-class salary without lifting a finger. This is the exact point where wealth stops depending on effort and starts depending on time. What makes this number so powerful is that it transforms how you live. At $10,000, you're just getting started. At $50,000, you're still testing your patience. At $100,000, you finally feel progress. But at $1 million, your investments alone can replace your job. It's the crossover point between worrying about money and watching it grow on its own. And the people who reach it faster are the ones who understand this secret early on. The real grind isn't about earning huge returns. It's about building to the point where those returns actually matter. Here's something most people overlook. They focus on chasing higher returns. But the truth is, the difference between 7% and 10% is small when you only have a few thousand saved. The real difference is how much you can put away consistently to reach that first $100,000. That's why investors like Warren Buffett always emphasize patience and steady contributions. Buffett didn't become a billionaire in his 30s. In fact, most of his wealth came after he turned 50, because by then compounding was doing the heavy lifting. He just kept feeding it until it exploded. Let's put numbers on it. If you saved $10,000 a year at 7%, it would take about 10 years to reach $100,000. Not exciting, but doable. Once you pass $100,000, every additional year accelerates the curve. By year 20, you could be close to $400,000. And by year 30, you'd be looking at $1 million. The lesson is simple. The hardest part is the beginning. Once you cross the secret number, the money starts working harder than your contributions. That's when the explosion happens. Now, some people argue that 1 million isn't what it used to be, and that's true in some ways. But what matters here isn't the headline number. It's the effect of compounding at scale. Whether your goal is financial freedom, early retirement, or just peace of mind, the principle is the same. You need to reach the point where growth outpaces your effort. That's why 1 million is still such a powerful milestone. It's not about the exact spending power, it's about the fact that it unlocks a new stage of wealth where money sustains itself. The mistake most people make is quitting too early. They save a few thousand, watch it grow slowly, and decide compounding is a myth. But the truth is, they never gave it enough time or enough capital to show its strength. Think of it like pushing a heavy ball uphill. The first part is all struggle. You feel like you're barely moving it. But once you reach the top and give it a nudge, it rolls on its own and gains momentum. The secret number is the top of the hill, Before it, you're grinding. After it, the ball is rolling without you. This is also why the gap between rich and poor keeps widening. The wealthy already live past the secret number. Their money grows in ways that make them look untouchable. Not because they're doing something mystical, but because they're playing on a different part of the curve. When their wealth doubles, it's because their base is so big that compounding doesn't need decades anymore. It can happen in just a few years. For someone starting from zero, that looks impossible. But the truth is, the same rule applies to everyone. It just takes discipline to reach the threshold. If you're still working toward it, the takeaway is simple. Focus less on chasing perfect investments and more on building that first $100,000. Cut expenses, save aggressively, and be patient. Once you pass that point, compounding finally feels real. And the closer you get to $1 million, the more unstoppable it becomes. By the time you're there, you don't need to take big risks or gamble on the next hot stock. The growth itself is enough to carry you forward. That's the real secret the wealthy live by. Once you've built the foundation, the system works on its own. Think about it this way. When you have $10,000 invested, a 10% return gives you $1,000. That feels small and it barely moves the needle. At $100,000, that same 10% gives you $10,000 in a year, which is more than many people save through their own effort. Now imagine $1 million, so a 10% return adds another $100,000. Without you lifting a finger. That's when you see how the wealthy keep pulling away. That's why so many people give up before they ever experience the real effects. They invest for a few years, see only small returns, and decide it's not worth it. But those small returns are like planting seeds. At first, the soil looks bare, and nothing seems to change. But once the roots take hold, growth shoots up faster than you ever expected. The wealthy understand this, which is why they protect their money during the early stages. They know if they can just get through the flat part of the curve, the growth will eventually feel automatic. By the time their wealth compounds past the six-figure mark, it no longer feels like they're trading time for money. Their money is working harder than they are. Think about it this way. Earning $5,000 in investment growth might take years when you're starting from zero. But once you have a strong base, that same $5,000 can show up in a single month, then a single week, and eventually in a single day. That's when compounding becomes visible, and that's when the numbers start to look unreal. The real secret isn't chasing the million. It's grinding your way through the first stage until compounding finally takes over for you. The people who stay patient long enough are the ones who get to watch their wealth explode. Because here's what most people miss. The early years feel the hardest, not because compounding doesn't work, but because the results are too small to notice. Saving a few hundred here or earning a few dollars in dividends doesn't feel life-changing. That's why so many give up before the curve bends upward. They can't see that the boring deposits, the skipped purchases, and the consistent investments are all laying bricks for something much bigger. And then one day, the math shifts. Your portfolio starts working harder than you do. Gains from investments outpace what you can add from your paycheck. It's not luck, and it's not a secret loophole. It's simply staying in the game long enough for time to do the heavy lifting. The million isn't built from some giant leap. It's built from the patience to cross that invisible threshold where compounding flips from frustratingly slow to shockingly fast.